Hi everybody, Jo here again. You know what that means. Time to grab yourself a brew and let's have a catch up. Sorry I didn't pop in for long yesterday. So I thought I'd make up for that and I'd come back today and we could have a proper catch up. As always, thank you to everybody. We've got some lovely new subscribers, which is always nice. And thanks to all those crafters who've enlisted for the workshop that I did yesterday, the watercolour one. Well, actually, this one sort of follows on a little bit. It might help you a little bit. And after doing the lovely watercolour floral book that I did for the workshop number 10, Lavinia, Tracy at Lavinia brought out some lovely watercolour card. And this is the pack here. And so, do you know what? I put an order in, bought some, and I thought I'd try it out. And really, that's what our catch-up is about today. Now, traditionally, watercolour card as a stamper would be something that we would avoid because it was quite textured. But you can get, depending on how it's made, smooth watercolour card. And this is, I have to say, very smooth. And so I thought I'd have a go at using it and I could show you what the idea I came up with. So as I say, this is the Lavinia card. You get 10 sheets, 10 A4 sheets. And again, you know me, if you're very careful how you cut your A4 sheet down. And again, to be honest, when I cut mine, look, I keep every single piece because, and especially the offcuts, I tend to cut a few ATC sizes, which is your 3.5 inches by 2.5 inches, and they'll be perfect for a lovely little, especially if I'm making a piece like today, I would have one of these at the side of me and make an extra little ATC up. So in the packaging, it keeps all my watercolour card together, but these are cut ready. So that's the product. And so it was the first time I'd used it yesterday, and this is what I came up with. And I've got to be honest, normally when I make a piece using watercolour, I have to leave it in a book overnight to be flattened, and I don't find it easy then actually taping it down. But this dried beautiful and flat. It didn't have to go in a book. I just left it overnight and I've glued it down this morning and it is beautiful and flat. So it is a very good quality. It's 300 GSM. Good weight, but it was the quality that got me. Now, when I say watercolour, you know me, I've got to clarify the point. I have no art training whatsoever. And I've got no watercolour. So if there is anybody watching who is a watercolour expert, I am not pretending I'm a watercolour expert whatsoever. And I know there's obviously Matthew Palmer and lots of other watercolour experts out there that you can take lessons from. And I'm not at all pretending to be anything like that. When I play with watercolour, basically I'm just using anything that I add water to. So I mean, this week I've been doing some painting with my Distress Oxide ink sprays and spraying them on my mat and watercolour painting with them. Today I'm actually going to use my Elements ink pads and we're going to watercolour paint with those. So for me, it's any product. If you've got aqua markers, scribble your aqua markers. I would always have a clean palette like this, one of my acrylic plates, scribble my aqua markers. And again, I would mix and match if I hadn't got the correct colours. Now, you can obviously have boxes and tubes of watercolour paints. Again, it's just a product you're adding water to. But like I say, if you want to find out how to do it all properly, by all means, there are lots of good YouTubes out there. I'm just a crafter and I'm just putting my take on it. So again, I'm just a friend coming to you saying, this is what I do. So, as I say, I'm not trying to be, you know, a teacher and telling you the correct way. This is just my take on it. And I've got to be honest, the ladies that come to my workshops know that I always say this is just my take on it. It's a way I found. And I've got to be honest, for me, I'm always looking for, I nearly said an easy way then, that sounds awful, but a nice way of, I think, getting a nice result, a good result, but a way that's achievable. And I want everybody to be able to achieve it. And that's my aim. So this is what I came up with. And I hope you like it. And as I say, it was my way. It's the first time I'd used this watercolour card and I am so impressed with it. So what I'll do is we'll get on. Now, the piece of card I've gone for is a 5" by 5" square. And that's purely because this is a great size to go on a 6x6 card, which is perfect for posting, but you could double mat and layer. So that's gone on a 6x6. But should I wish, I could have put even blue behind and then put that on a 7x7 or an 8x8. So you've got choices. As always, I've left this without a sentiment, so I could always add a sentiment at a later date. Sometimes I think, especially with the watercolour scenes, I think it's nice to actually just have that beautiful scene. And then if the recipient wanted to keep it, wanted to frame it, then they can, and it's there for them. Because at the end of the day, you've done, this is my homage to watercolour. And so the one thing I will point out about the card is it is quite creamy. I mean, that's fine because we're going to cover it with ink and water, but just so you know, it is almost an off-white. Now, the first thing I do when I'm doing my, as I say, my take on watercolour is we're going to stamp first. Oh, sorry, Eric. Eric's under my chair today, not my table. And I just wanted to get my magazine. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is stamp. And again, this is just the way that I approach it. For me, it's the easiest way. And I'm going to start with this lovely tree of hope. I think this one's the tree of hope. So you've got the tree of courage and the tree of hope. And I'm going to use black VersaFine Clair. Obviously, your VersaFine is a permanent ink pad. So I know that when I do my stamping, because I'm using my permanent ink pad, I can splash water over this and it's not going to move. And I know we often get asked questions, I often get emails of, especially new crafters asking, I want to buy some ink pads, do I buy the VersaFine Clair or do I buy the Elements? And the thing is, basically they are just so different. So again, your VersaFine Clair is your permanent ink pad, so we're going to stamp on that and it will stay there. Your Elements is a dye base, so you can add water, so we can do our watercolour within and it will move. So the two work beautifully together. So unfortunately, my answer is, unfortunately, you need both. But again, you know, you could do far worse than starting with just a black VersaFine Clair and a couple of coloured Elements. And you could make this project. I mean, I've used 4, but I'm just mixing the Elements to make, again, colours that I haven't got. And again, I'm just going to ink at the side. And often we think, when we're using a big stamp like this tree, we think it's got to be on a large piece of work. But sometimes it's nice to actually fill the space. I think as well, as a new crafter, you almost feel you have to, if it's a big stamp, it needs to go on a big piece of work. But you know, often we don't need to use the whole stamp. I mean, it's like this, I'm only using, is it 4 different stamps? Now again, it is quite a smooth card, this. So there's no bobbles, but I would always give the ink time to soak in. And again, the All and Create, this is an All and Create block, and they are flexible, so you can just bend them a little. I mean, there's so much detail on these stamps, you want to get all that detail. Now, when I started off, I used to have to stamp standing up just to get the pressure. But now with doing all this, I'm sat down, so I don't find it as easy. But that's where these blocks come in, because I can put that extra pressure. Now, if you're happy, you can use a stamp press. I know some crafters prefer a stamp press, which again is fine. But look at that, the detail in this tree is just amazing. And as I said, I'm going to do all my stamping first. So I'm going to come in next with my fox. Now, I think this is from Fox Set 1. And again, I'm going to do him in black. He won't end up totally black. But for me, I find it easier to start off with. I'm just going to stamp him in black. And I'm going to put this the right way around this time, because I want to make him look like he's just sort of sat here looking up. He's just at the base of the tree looking up. And again, he's a silhouette, so we're going to give that a couple of seconds just to soak into the card. Don't be in a rush to lift it up. And as you can see, I go between my All and Create blocks, my Lavinia blocks. Depending what stamp I've got, I just mix the blocks up. Sometimes it's just what's nearest, what's at hand. Now again, give him a good bit of oomph. Now, don't worry. Obviously, I haven't put enough ink on the front. It's a little bit light there, but that's fine. That's actually, we're going to end up watercolouring him. So don't worry about that. That's fine. I mean, again, I know a lot of, when I started off, I would panic now and think, oh, no, you've not done it right. Doesn't matter. We're actually going to, that's perfect because we're going to add some colour with our inks there. So don't worry at all. Again, we end up being too, I think we worry too much about what we're doing. The next bit we're going to do is add the orchard grass. And as you know, I made the mistake of thinking it was called the orchid grass for a while. So lovely Anya showed me the error of my ways. The trouble is, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm in a rush, I don't read things properly. I see what I want to see rather than, I'm sure we all do it, but then it gets in my head. It's like that Shady Lady ink pad that should be Shady Lane. Once it's gone in my head as Shady Lady, that's how it stays. So I have to remember orchard. And I do, before I did this video, I kept saying to myself, it's orchard. But obviously, any grass. And what we're doing here is we're just adding a little bit. This is such a lovely wispy, you can stamp it in front of things, and we just want a little bit of foreground. We're almost building up our scene and we want some perspective. So I just want something in the foreground, not too much. Maybe just another one there, just something to give me that perspective. So I've got the grass in the foreground, the midground here, and then we're going to have our landscape. And the last thing I'm just going to stamp, again, I want to do all my stamping first, is this lovely little hanging vine. So I'm just going to, I want to put one so it looks as though our fox is looking up at it. And I just want a few, I don't want to overcook it. And if you did leave too big a gap, remember, just draw it in with your black fine liner. I think we need another there, and then possibly one more up there. Again, we don't want any pizzas, we don't want to overcook it. Right, now that's 6, we want an odd number, don't we? And there does look to be a space there, so let's take that one there. Yeah. So that's all my black stamping done. So I'm just going to give that a bit of a blot. And actually what I'll do is just run the heat tool over it. So excuse the noise, just to make sure that that ink's dry. Because again, your VersaFine Clair is a slower drying ink. So I'll just give it, and again, just heat from underneath. Now, on my finished one here, we've got a little bit of, just a bit of landscape here going on. And I just want to be mindful, really, of where that's going to be to give me an idea when I'm adding that watercolour. So I'm going to take one of my fine liners. Just going to check it's working. Oh, it's a bit scratchy, that one. Got another one here. It's only a little bit better, but it'll be fine. And we're going to draw this on. Now, my best suggestion with this is practice on copy paper, but also don't think about it too much and don't go for a definite. You see how this is quite a sketchy look? Well, I'm just going to add a little bit more here to the end of the tree. Give me a bit more detail there. And just a little bit, a few lines, that's all you need, nothing too much. So again, I'm just going to come in here and very loosely, don't hold your grip your pen, a nice light, and I'm just going to almost add some feathery. And I'm just going to, I don't want it too straight, we'll just go for that. And then we'll add a bit of a hill up here. And again, as I say, I'm certainly no expert, no artist whatsoever, but this is just my take on it. I'm just going to do it nice and light. And I just think, for me, doing those few little lines rather than a heavy, you know, I think if you go on with a real heavy line like that, it's almost looks wrong. So I think if you go on with almost that sort of sketchy and hold your pen nice and loose, it looks much better. So that's what we end up with. And then it's a lovely bit now of adding the ink, adding our watercolour. So the two colours I've gone for the sky is I've gone for Blue Lagoon and Paprika. And the reason I wanted to use these, I could have used my oxides or my distress ink, but I wanted to show you because I know a lot of you have invested in the elements. And so it's important when we bought these products that we use them. Now I'm just going to put some ink on my craft mat. Now remember, these are very juicy. And always put your lid on your ink pad. And I'm just pressing it straight on my craft mat. Now what I'm going to do is I've got a water pot and I've got a lovely, move that out of the way, this is just a 1 inch and it's a flat brush. And as you can see, I use it for gesso, I use it for paint, it's one brush does all. And what I'm going to do is, with the water, I'm just going to paint across the sky. And what I'm doing is wetting the card. So we're going to do a wet on wet technique. And then I'm just going to add some water to my blue. And I'm going to bring that blue in. Again, just across my sky, not being too careful. And then, where my inky binky comes in, I'm now going to add some of this paprika. Now, although it seems quite bright, I just want that. I don't want a total blue sky. I want a bit of colour. And you do get skies, don't you, that if I bring it back, look, and I'm just going to let it watercolour, mix it. See, we could have that lovely sunset. And now to make my clouds, I'm going to take my kitchen roll and we're going to have a cloud there. And this is going to take the paint and the water off and it will give me a cloud. Now I want a longer one over here. And again, just press it down, lift it up. Oh, that's nice. And you don't overcook it. Let's just have one coming in here. So it's like stamping. Let's have one off the page. So obviously you need to do this while it's wet to soak up. And then what you can do is, I just want to bring in a bit of the darker blue. So I'm just going for a smaller brush, just where I want to bring in at the top here. I just want it at some little areas of just darker blue. So I'm just puddling this in. I love that bit there. And maybe just a bit of darker blue here. And just let it dry, let it puddle. And then I think we've got a lovely sky there. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do is just dry that from there. So if I bring that closer, can you see how we've got that lovely, almost like a stormy sky there going on? Or it could be sunrise, sunset. I'm not putting the sun in at all. I'm just going for that general sky with some cloud. So then we're going to look at the grass. And so for that, I've got the pine. But I'm also going to bring in a little bit of Sahara. So again, on my mat, I'm just going to add some pine and some Sahara. And again, I don't press the whole ink pad down, just the end, because obviously I don't need too much. And I can always add more ink if I need it. For me, I wouldn't go straight to the ink pad. I wouldn't introduce water to this. I want to keep the integrity of that ink pad. So for me, it's easy just to pop it on my mat. And as I say, it's often easier to use these and use one of your offcuts off you know, rather than waste it, use one of your offcuts and make yourself another lovely background. So I just want to check that and it's the same thing. We're going to come in. Now again, we've used a permanent ink, so I'm going to go straight over. And I'm going to come in with my green. And I'm going straight over. And I'm working my way up because to help with the perspective, I want it lighter in the distance. So what I'm going to do now is mix a little bit of the Sahara with the green to give me almost a richer green at the front. Maybe I'll bring in a bit of this. There we go. Just to give me that's at the front. Now also here, we don't want it all one colour. So I'm just going to use the edge of my brush, look. Just almost on the skyline there. And just to do at the bottom of that hill there. And just maybe a couple of bits. Just so it's not all. Maybe even just introduce a little bit of that in. Just so it doesn't look, I mean, when you look, it's never one colour, is it? The green's never totally just green. And then let's add a bit of shade under our fox here. So maybe go, what does Sahara and Paprika look like? I can't remember what colour I used, you see. I'm wondering, was it? I do this. Just play. Let's have a look. That'll give us a nice shadowy tone, won't it? Right, now we want to paint the tree. Now again, because it's good quality card, I mean, it's warped a little, but as it dries, I mean, I've got to be honest, for me, for the amount of water I've added here, the card is staying relatively flat. So I'm just going to bring in some of the Sahara. And I've got a stray hair on my paintbrush. I'm just going to add some colour. Maybe just add a bit of paprika in that to brown it up a little. Yeah, that's better. And again, this bit is lovely because it's so relaxing. Now these bits here are quite narrow, so I'm just going to come in with my finer paintbrush. Just see if I can add. And again, it's almost a homage to watercolour, so you can be quite relaxed about it. And I'm sorry if my head comes in the way, just while I add the detail. And what's lovely is all that ink, all that detail shows through. The permanent ink shows through your lovely dye-based inks. I'm just going to add a little bit at the end here, just to give that impression of the colour. There we go. And then let's go, I just want to add a little bit of shade on my tree. So what I'm thinking is the colour I'm using, if I add a bit of the blue, will it give me a bit of a darker, richer, to give me a bit of shade here, look. Yeah, I think I want a bit more. Just to give me a bit more of a contrast. Yeah, that's better. See what I mean? It just gives you more of a shade colour. That little bit of blue in the tree gives a bit more depth. And just under our fox here, we'll have a little bit of that. And the same at the base of the tree and just off to the side here. And again, you know, like I say, I'm using 4 colours. I'm not using lots and lots of products here. We're just having this basic little, and you know, if you want to add a little bit more here, I mean, as it dries, it just dries. I just love the effect that it's drying. Just add a few more strokes in there, just give it a bit more of a watercolour-y. Right. And again, honestly, I mean, I'm doing this I'm mindful of time here, but you know, if you have a go at this, honestly, I really seriously mean it, make yourself a brew and just relax. I know a couple of you, I know Bonnie, you know, sending you big hugs. I know I've had quite a few emails and messages from lovely crafters who just need a special hug at the minute and really want to join. So we can all, if we can all just get together, make a brew, and we can all do this together and feel as though we're in a nice little class, we're in a nice room, maybe there's a fire roaring in the corner, or maybe the birds are singing outside and it's summer. You know, let's just spend a little bit of quality time together and just help each other out. And that's what I'm here for. I've got to be honest, I think, considering we started with a plain piece of paper, and as I say, I'm no expert. I know there are some lovely, lovely people who are. I certainly am not. Now, with the fox, if you remember me saying he didn't stamp perfectly, but I'm not worried because what I'm going to do is come in with my paprika, because my fox, I want a bit of reddy brown, and this paprika's perfect for that. And what I'm going to do is just add a bit of watercolour, just paint and add that paprika. And I'm going over the black, and it's quite watery because I don't want it to be too full on colour. I just want the idea of almost that sort of foxy red, but it's still in silhouette. So again, take your time, don't go outside the lines. You don't want to spoil the integrity of the lovely stamp. I mean, Tracy's given us so much detail here. We're not spoiling that, we're just adding to it. And so look at that, it's given us that lovely, lovely fox red. And I've stopped there on his tail because I want to add some white just to the end of his tail. Oh, I've got to be honest, I'm really pleased with that. I love this sky. Just shows you what you can do, and a lot of it is down. And again, I'm not being funny, it's down to the quality of this watercolour card. I'm very impressed with this. I'm certainly going to be using it again. Now for me, that's all I'm going to do. So I'm going to mop this up just because I want to show you a couple of little bits how I'm going to finish this off. But normally I would use this and paint another background, but don't look, we're going to the power, there we go, all gone. So I hope you've got a lovely day planned, or if it's evening, I hope you've had a lovely day. Things are certainly getting back to normal here. My husband supports Manchester United, and he was lucky, actually went back to Old Trafford last night. So he was really ecstatic at seeing his mates. So I must admit, as I did say to him, I can't wait till I can see my crafty mates again. You know, but things are getting there, aren't they? So, and until then, we meet on here and have our catch-up, don't we? Right, important, just wiped my hands. Obviously, the Elements ink pads are highly pigmented, so it's important to try and keep your hands lovely and clean. Now, again, I would let this dry naturally, but as you can see, the card is really flat. And don't worry, you will get a little bit soaking through, that's fine. A lot of that just comes from what's on the mat. But it actually dries very quickly. Now, normally, let it dry naturally. But just for this, I'm just going to whiz my heat tool over it, just so I can show you. But if I was at home, I'd let that dry, maybe just 10 minutes, and then do the finishing tricks. But obviously, you don't want to sit and listen to me for 10 minutes, do you? So just for the last little bits, what we're going to do is add a little bit more detail. And we're going to come in with a couple of things, a couple of Posca pens. Now, I don't know if you know, but Posca make glitter pens. And I've got to be honest, these are rather lovely. So as always, they've got a ball bearing in, so you need to shake them. And I'm just going to add this on my little orchard. I had to think, oh, yes, okay, no, orchard, yes, on my orchard grass here. And I just want to add a little bit of just brightness. And the reason I've gone for this lovely pinky colour is I thought it sort of went tone on tone with the pink of the sky, and it balanced it. I didn't want to introduce, when I was looking at my colours, I didn't want to introduce, say, bright yellow or green. I wanted to almost keep it quite tonal. Sometimes the fewer colour groups you add, the better. You know, I always say to you, don't want a pizza. Well, it'll just help you not have it that pizza. And often in nature, you will see that the colour on the land is reflected by the colour in the sky. They say that, don't they, with the sea? So it's nice to almost, you know, we do want to, where we can, get our perspective. And I think here we've got our foreground, our midground, and our distance, our landscape. I mean, I could have, if I wanted, added a few little trees here, but I thought for today, you know, let's not push it. Let's just, I'm happy with creating this lovely landscape, and then maybe next time we can move on to how to add some trees. Now I'm going to use my gold signal, and this is, I thought my Posca might be a little bit too heavy for the hanging little lanterns, or we have little bits that hang in the UK called catkins, but I don't know if that's colloquial where you come from. I was out with Elliot, one of our grandsons, and he's 3.5, and I told him about catkins. And Adam, our son, his dad, said to me, what were you telling Elliot the other day? He went home and said to Daniele's mum, look, Grandma's got catkins, and she'd never heard of them. So I think it may be a colloquial thing. I have heard them called lamb's tails before. They're the little sort of, well, things like this that hang down, not probably as big as this. So maybe I'll have to look that up and see if it's something that everybody has. Now, what I want now is just to add some highlights. And often we use our Posca, don't we, and just take our Posca pen straight for the highlight. But what I've found is, sometimes the Posca can, well, basically go everywhere if we're not careful. But also, with a watercolour, I almost want to keep it a little bit muted and more watercolour type. So for me, the best way, shape my Posca, what I found is, if I put some Posca on my mat, and then I'm going to come in with my paintbrush and I'm going to paint my Posca on. And it just keeps it a bit more almost like I've used, I mean, I dare say you could use a white paint, but for me, obviously I like my Posca, and I'm just going to paint the end of his tail. And because I've got such a fine paintbrush, I can just paint just a little bit of, and because it's added water, I've got water on my paintbrush, it almost is a little bit more, it's not as intense, I think is the best way I can put. And again, very loosely, hold your brush very loose. Just a little bit on his nose there. Now, I'm not adding any features, I'm just going with highlight on what I've got. And we'll add some on the tree, look. Again, not a lot, just a little bit on this side. And it's these little bits that just make that difference. Can add a bit up here. And if you'd gone, I mean, I've gone over there, doesn't matter, it's a watercolour, but you can, if you want, come in with your white and just blend it in, look, almost get rid of it. And if you want to just add a little bit of dots on there, just add a few little highlights, just where maybe if the sun's just breaking through, it's just catching there. We don't know what these are, we don't have to know. They're in the distance, just a bit of something on the horizon. There we go. Right, let me mop that up, because you know what will happen if you don't, your hand will go in it. Now, I'm not going to add any glitter or anything like that to this, because for me, I just want this to be this lovely watercolour piece. And if I bring in the original, Let me see if we've got them side by side. I must admit, I actually prefer the sky in this one. I think I prefer a bit more of the paprika in the sky. Just shows you the difference, doesn't it? But again, maybe because this was my first one. I mean, often that's the case, isn't it? I do say that to ladies and gentlemen at workshops. Sometimes your workshop ones, you practice one. Don't be disheartened if it's not as perfect as you want. When you go home and redo it, you'll be more relaxed. And maybe, certainly for me, I think the second one for me is nicer than the first. But maybe that's because this could be my practice piece, and this is me just relaxed with you, enjoying the process and actually creating something a little bit. Hey, who knows? Maybe if I do it again, it might get a little bit better. But again, that's why we practice, isn't it? I know when I've done the television shows, oh, do I practice? Practice, practice, practice. But yeah, I must admit, I really enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed it. But what I was going to say, so anybody who signed up for the workshops with the watercolour, the floral, the book that we're making, I've got to be honest, I used just a normal card for that. I think if you had some of the watercolour card, it would work even better. So that's my little tip. Certainly I'm going to make another book, and I think I'll be using the watercolour card, and I think it will work even better. So thanks for joining me today. I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and you take care. And as always, in the comments, I'll put my email address. It's jrcrafts28@gmail.com. And I know a few of you have asked about you wanting to share your work with me. By all means, you email it to me. And if you're happy, I can always put it on my blog as well. And then that way we can share our work with each other. Because it is lovely to know that you craft along with me. That it really means so much. Your messages that you send, honestly, I am just honoured to actually be able to come into your craft room, into your houses and spend time with you. I am blessed. So you take care, everybody. Much love and hugs from me. Bye for now.